In the following interview, I sit down with Antonio Zivanovic. Antonio is the CEO of Reframe Group and the founder and CEO of Electrify. It is a heartfelt conversation about personal growth, financial literacy, and the challenges of balancing ambition with personal well-being. Antonio shares his own journey from financial instability to a highly successful acquisition, and really the importance that financial education played in his journey, which is really the theme and the whole ethos behind his work at Electrify. And we talk through the pressures of modern life, the significance of expanding your self-awareness, and the need to prioritize personal health and relationships. And as always, this episode is brought to you by our amazing partners at optimizing.ai. Their patented emotion detection technology reveals exactly how your audience feels about your product demos, campaigns, tutorials, or really any digital experience. This is tracking all vital signs and stress levels, all using the webcam. It's pretty cool sci-fi stuff. And for a limited time, they are offering 2 months of optimizing.ai for free to all Wake Up Call listeners. And our second partner is Dream Fuel. They are a mental performance coaching platform for leaders as well as teams. As I've said before, I've personally been coached by their elite team, and honestly, I couldn't recommend them highly enough. And they're also giving away 5 Wake Up Call listeners a free one-to-one coaching call. So that's 5 listeners get a free one-to-one coaching call with their team. If you're stuck, you're feeling plateaued, or looking to bring your game to the next level, definitely talk to their team. Now, on to my episode with Antonio. Antonio, what's up, man?
Hey, how you doing, Scott?
I'm
Feeling
doing
feeling
well.
good, excited about today?
I am. I am. I've been excited for this conversation for a little while now, and we had a great chat last night, and I feel like we probably could have just hit record on that cell phone call we had, and there was a lot in there, and I'm excited to dive into it all with you today. And before we dive into it, I got to give you your flowers, man. Congrats on this latest
Thank you.
acquisition, uh, 7-figure acquisition. How does that feel, man?
It feels a little bit surreal as I'm standing here in our office in Kits, 4 blocks from here. In 2009, I couldn't pay my groceries at Safeway, so things have come a long way.
Yeah, that's that's incredible and such a great just Vancouver success story. And we have a good tech ecosystem here, or we'll call it budding tech ecosystem. But I absolutely love it when I get to chat with founders like yourself who are doing, big things in Vancouver and across Canada.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. It'll be an amazing partnership moving forward for both Reframe and Electrify, and the community, and just the integration and experience for those who will engage in any of the type of services. It's going to be just the premium experience for employees in the country. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's incredible. And other thing I like about this, obviously, this is a very, mission-driven podcast, and the whole idea, behind Electrify and what you're building is very mission-driven. You want to talk just quickly on that?
Sure. Yeah. I think sometimes when I go to share the stats around financial instability in the country, it's almost like I feel like I'm lying because they're so shocking. Like 51% of Canadian families are $200 away from not being able to pay their bills. Almost 70% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. And I saw Kirk LaPointe shared in the BIV just recently an article about Another stat was British Columbians now are almost $23,000 in debt on average, not mortgage or housing related. And maybe another final stat that I saw for CFP that's pretty prolific online, shared that the average Canadian now for their vehicles is making a vehicle payment of over $800 a month. And so I don't know. I just don't know how we're going to fix this. And I want to be part of the solution. And I feel like I want to help move people from financial illiteracy to financial competency. And I want to give kids Electrify or a version like it in the future for free to help move the dial, because that's where I believe things need to start.
It's so huge. And, we talk a lot about on this podcast, ways to alleviate stress and ways to calm your anxiety when you're out there, doing hard things. And a huge, huge part of that, obviously, money is a big part of the world that we all live in. And, the amount of stress that I've personally felt in the past, that I know a lot of people feel, is deep. I would say it's got to be like the number one or two stress in people's life. And it's interesting that you talk about approaching it at a young age. Like, it's wild that we go through basically all of high school and there's no talk about financial literacy whatsoever. No, like, here's how you do your taxes. Here's how you set up a checking account, a savings account. This is what a TFSA is. Like, I don't remember any of that, but somehow learned the Pythagorean theorem, and that stuck with me. Like, haven't used that much, it's wild.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like this is a story that just continues to go on from generation to generation. As a first generation Canadian, my parents didn't get this education here. I didn't. You and I, are similar in our perspective. I didn't get this in school. Feel really confident that I left well prepared for my future. And so I feel Electrify and this category of offering in the marketplace is coming of age. And it's like when the LMSs came of age when the pandemic really hit. I feel like this is the next area. In 5 years, we're going to be talking about this, and it's going to be like, oh, yeah, this is a category of offering across employers.
Yeah. It's about time. And I think it's a great idea and strategy to go through, employers and benefits. Like, this should be something that everyone has access through, through their employer. But I want to go back, this is wake up call. And, you alluded to this fact of, back in 2009, you're sitting at the grocery store and you can't pay that grocery bill. Walk me through that time period in your life and kind of what was going on.
Yeah, I had a business. Ironically, I had a corporate health and wellness firm, and I'm trying to save everyone else, but I'm dying, literally dying on the inside, and I'm paying everyone and not able to pay myself. And I remember, like it was yesterday, being at Till One in Safeway and identifying that, okay, pulling out a card and the people are behind you at the cash register and that card doesn't work. You pull out a credit card, another card, and everything, there's like insufficient funds, and then you start looking and you start making really direct decisions. You're like, okay, toilet paper, I return that because I know I can go to the gym and go to a coffee shop and slip into the washroom. Soap, I know there's soap at the gym shower, so I return the soap, and I return the shampoo. Um, and so I left there with about $60 of items, and that's all I had. And yeah, it's a humbling experience when that was like just around the market crash, just before the Olympics here. And during the Olympics, that was a hard time for me. For a lot of people, they were celebrating the Olympics, and I was barely getting by.
Mhm. I feel like a lot of people can resonate with that feeling. I have had that before in my life, and like that pit in your stomach where you're like, your brain just goes a million miles a minute. You're like, wait, there's nothing like anywhere. And you do all these mental gymnastics to try and think, do I have any somewhere? Do I have any cash at home? Horrible, horrible feeling. Um, and, the other thing you said there, which I can resonate with even in this new journey, is I think some people find it easier to help others instead of helping themselves. It's actually easier to focus on giving other people the answers or supporting friends or family versus giving yourself a really hard look in the mirror and being like, okay, actually, I might be the one who needs help right now. And, I'll openly admit that this week has been fucking nuts with selling my house, selling everything I own, and I'm launching this, new podcast and everything. And I'm on these episodes talking about health and wellness and the importance of moving your body and like skip the gym 2 days in a row, So it's sometimes, we're kind of walking contradictions, but um, how does that resonate with you? This idea that when you're in the thick of it, sometimes it's easier to look outward and fix problems instead of fixing inward.
Oh, for sure. For sure. 100% it resonates with me. It's ironic that you mentioned, oh, I skipped the gym 2 days. Today was my first day in almost 2 weeks because I was heads down trying to get this acquisition across the line. And yeah, so I feel great. I'm glad I went. Um, but over the last weeks, I've been feeling horrible. Um, but I kind of live by there's three buckets: personal, health, and career. And at any time, you can do two of those three things very, like, really well. But it's almost impossible to do all three all in at all times.
Mhm.
And so I think it's okay to be imbalanced at times and seasons. And I believe that. I'm like, sometimes you just got to go all in on work, but you got to have enough self-awareness to communicate with people around you that that's like going to be a little phase. But you need to rebalance every once in a while. If you're in one of the places too deep for too long, well, that's really, it can be harmful in other areas.
Mhm. Talk me through so something I've struggled with, and I think many do, is I used to intellectually understand what you're describing. And I'd be like, no, this is just a season. And this is career season. For me, it was always career season for a long time. And, from my time, yeah, probably starting at like sales hacker, I was like, okay, this is a big opportunity. I have to take advantage of this. And then the acquisition happened, 4 years at Outreach. Okay, this is huge. We're, a unicorn company. This is just a season. And then the fund was just a season. And I got lost in that season. It was summer or winter all the time, which probably more like winter with brief moments of summer. How do you tactically like remind yourself or pull yourself out of a season without losing yourself?
Whew, great question. It's hard because the deeper you go, the harder it seems it is to climb out.
Mhm.
For me, anyway. I think if we don't, if we don't pull ourselves out, I find life has a way for me in my health by giving me signals, clear signals, like um, when I've been sick and just not feeling well. Um, those are signals that, hey, you're redlining here for too long and you need to reset. And because you're not resetting, I'm my body's like, I'm going to do that for you now, whether you like it or not. Um, on a tactical front, one of the things that I do that I've shared with many people is I have a person in the morning for my life at 6:45 to 9 a.m. because I've got three young boys, ages 4, 6, and 8, and we have someone who comes in and they and prep and do all of the work in the house, all of the tasks to support our running our life. And then we have someone from 4:30 to about 8:30, 4 nights a week. And that's just to keep us moving. And I think where what I've seen busy people, they put the effort to getting a cleaner, but it's not cleaning that impacts our daily decisions around our well-being. And I find that more often than not is our food and all of those other tasks. And so that eats up our capacity and our ability to live a healthy life. And so I've actually, Scott, I've got a link to a folder that has an ad that I created and then all the photos associated with that and a follow-up to when people respond. So if people want to outsource that and try this, I will give you the link and you can include it in the follow-up podcast notes for people and make it shareable so anybody can use it.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, we'll throw that in the show notes. And I think those are, yeah, for me, I totally get what you're saying. It's not so much the task of cleaning or cooking or going to the grocery store. It's the overwhelming like decision fatigue that comes with having to manage all of those little tiny nuanced things. And so if you can outsource some of those decision making that they don't really matter, it's like, okay, I don't care if I have chicken or steak tonight. Like it's all good, Um, those can be super helpful. How how do you balance? So I don't have kids, and I look at people who are doing hard things. And even when I was going through it, I used to say like, listen, I'm playing this thing on easy mode because I didn't have kids. And easy mode was really fucking hard. So like, how do you manage fatherhood and ambition? I think it's so beautiful for your sons to watch their father go and do hard things and accomplish things. And I think you're teaching them just by being a lot of really incredible lessons. But kids also need your time, your attention, not just your presence, but your mind and your body is there. Um, do you have any tips or strategies for maybe the parents that are listening to this that allow you to balance that effectively?
Yeah, thanks. I don't like to give parenting advice, but what I will give is my experience and what's worked for us. Um, my wife's a physician, a psychiatrist, and yesterday she rode 90K on her bike.
Wow.
She's preparing for the Fondo coming up. And, you know, uh, I, I feel like people don't like burnout comes from many different places, but one of them I find is like if you're not aligned with your core values and your purpose, and it doesn't have to come from your work either. That can come from other places outside your work, but it needs to be fulfilling and you need to feel pulled rather than pushing against something all the time. And I find that makes it easy to just get out of bed in the morning. Um, I find with parenting, there's a lot of things going on. And so, like events, if I've got 3 kids, so if each kid has 10 friends, that's 30 birthday parties a year, just birthday parties. And so, um, and I have 5 simple family rules for our kids. Um, and they are go the distance, never give up. Those are kind of the same thing there. Be the hardest worker in the room. Have fun. Be kind. And have a great attitude. So it's interesting though, Scott, recently, my eldest son, he, he, 4 weeks ago, he had a track meet, ran 200 meters of a 600-meter race and got off the field and was losing his mind and like quit. And I was like, I didn't have a good dad moment at that time. I could have been better. I was like, get on the fucking field, finish that. I don't care if you crawl, walk. He just, you know, anyway, then a week later, he got a 4th, a 6th, and a participation, and he won this 100-meter dash that he did. So he totally turned things around. But then when I saw him after school, he didn't want to go home with me. And he was super upset. And he went home with our nanny. And later that evening, about an hour and a half after he was at home, he shared that he thought I would be super disappointed and he wasn't happy. So I always tell him, it doesn't matter to me if you win. I just want you to be the hardest worker in the room. I want you to go the distance, be kind, have fun, and have a great attitude. But even though I tell him these things, Scott, our kids see your actions. And so he knows that I have a desire to win. Like I'll race you across the sidewalk. There's no reason for me to want to win to get on the other side of the sidewalk. But in my brain, I want to step on the other side first. I'm just like, as an entrepreneur, I'm a bit broken. I have an off switch and an on switch. And so my son sees that, even though the words are coming out of my mouth are very different from my actions. So I'm having to just rectify this in my own world and understanding how to communicate this to support him in the best way possible. And we at the end of the night later, he had a freezy. I walked up with a freezy. We sat down and had an amazing conversation, and things have been so good. But I realized that I have to reinforce the things that I'm saying in unique ways because my actions are a little bit disconnected because I want to win.
You could see me smiling and laughing because we're certainly hardwired the same way. And it's been so funny in this little, call it hiatus I'm having. I don't have uh like in the day to day at the fund, there was like little wins every day, right? You can like raise money, you can have a good founder meeting, you can like, win an allocation. I don't really have that anymore. So I'm like competitive at the most ridiculous things. And I'm like talking my girlfriend into playing Monopoly Deal with me like 5 times a night just so I can feel some dopamine of like winning. It's super funny. But yeah, thanks for sharing those kind of 5 tenets. I think those are great for not only raising children, but just living by. One thing I was thinking about as you were talking is sort of this important nuance of what comes first. And there's no right answer, but I would love to hear what you think. The have fun and be kind, or be the hardest worker in the room. Because I have certainly been guilty of sacrificing at least the have fun part in service of being the hardest worker. And this goes back to sports. When I was a kid, in business, I put that on a pedestal more than anything. And the relentless pursuit of that sometimes made it not fun. How do you balance those two and hold those two?
It's tough. I can relate exactly to the things that you just shared there. I I believe it's not about the destination, it's about who we become on the journey. And so I really want to enforce that in my son's DNA. And if there's one thing that I want that when I'm gone, I know that my kids are gritty and resilient. And um, fortunately, Scott, they've got a level of empathy that is wildly impressive for people at their age. And I think that comes from my wife's just her being a psychiatrist and very insightful. Um, and my the boys are just really kind boys and thoughtful and empathetic to a level that I'm actually quite impressed and amazed with. The teacher the other day, Maximus's teacher, my eldest, she said, he's going to be amazing. I don't know what he's going to be, but he's probably going to become the prime minister of Canada someday.
Doing something right.
He's in grade 3. So
he's in grade 3? That's a bold prediction.
3. Yeah. She was saying like he goes over to like the kids when they're by themselves, and pulls them in, and like if they're, like he's just and he works hard, but he's also he's got all these emotions and he feels everything, but he doesn't know how to process that exactly now because obviously he's 8 years old. So it's fascinating learning from seeing this, but also not wanting to put your own stuff onto them,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think for better or worse, we put our own stuff onto them. They're learning and watching dad, but it sounds of it, you're a fantastic father, and the kids are so lucky to have you. Um, so, I was looking up, before we hit record, and you have a personal mission statement, and it resonated with me. And it is to inform, inspire, and equip people so they can be freed from the obstacles that prevent them from realizing their full potential. What do you see in your experience are the main obstacles that prevent people from realizing that full potential?
Usually I think we are our own biggest obstacle. The voices that we have. There was a good book, a coach of mine referred to me. It's called Positive Intelligence. And if you've ever seen the kids' movies Inside Out, I feel like those movies are brilliant movies. And this is like the Positive Intelligence is like the adult version of Inside Out. So you're identifying like, oh, that's my saboteur. And so if you're able to like step out, identify that and like, hey, that's not me, Scott, that's Wild Bill coming into the picture here. And so I think, yeah, for me, that's my bit. I'm the same things, Scott, that help me move forward are the exact same things I've identified that also have hindered me in my career. And some of them were drive, a certain level of stubbornness, defensiveness, relentless will to win, but then also those can be strengths. But if you're damaging relationships along the way and not being cognizant of how that's impacting others, well, that can be holding you back as well. So I believe that we've got to drive our strengths and our weaknesses. We just have to make sure they're not holding us back. They don't have to be a strength, but in business, I feel like drive your strengths and let others who are strong in other places take care of the things that they love to do, because everybody has different gifts. And so try to find and match the skill sets with those gifts. But in my personal, like health wise, I feel like specialize and not specializing. So kind of like the hybrid, your fitness, depends what your goals are, obviously. But for me, that's just a little bit of my philosophy.
Yeah. I want to underscore something and maybe dive a little bit deeper into what you described there. And I can't remember the correct term. I think I've been told it's called family systems or parts work. I've done some work in this area with kind of a mentor and a coach, and it's about labeling and identifying the different parts of ourselves. And you mentioned like the saboteur, for myself, I've got what I call the Viking inside of me, who has this relentless drive and believes and can accomplish anything he puts his mind to. But that part of me is also incredibly self-destructive if he is running the show. And so just by sort of labeling it, I can understand when that part of my personality is coming out and almost just witness it and be like, oh, that's funny that I'm having that thought. Thank you, Viking, but I don't need that right now. That's actually going to ruin my life if we do that. And there's another one in there I call like kind of the trickster, who it's kind of whole job is to not trick others, but trick myself into, you know, thinking something is a good idea or continue telling myself stories that are not true, and it's been really, really helpful for me is doing some of this work. I would love to know if, you've identified some of those, characters in your own makeup.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting the question you asked there. I remember a gentleman who I haven't seen in a long time, but he his name's Casey Miller, and he was taking this course, and he said he got asked this question, and the question was, do you or do I what I believe to be true, is it really true? So asking yourself, are you just making that up and attaching an emotion and experience that you're just attaching emotion to something that didn't happen for your purposes or whatever that is there? So I find that that's an interesting question. Sorry, Scott, I'm off track here, but what was your question again?
No, it was a great, great point. And, you do have to second guess these quote unquote truths that you think. Oftentimes it's just your brain like reframing things in a way that suits your purpose, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not the actual truth. But going back to, yeah, the question was, have you identified some of these characters in your own life that come out, that can be positive and negative?
For sure, for sure. For me, one of the things was like in my heart, I want to help, and I want to be a helper, but many times in my life, um, like you and I were chatting last night, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself, like you gotta, you first, you gotta be able to help others if you're not in a good state yourself. Um, and so one of the things I realized was I don't, like, a lot of people are like, yeah, I got really good at saying no lately. Well, I realized I couldn't, I wasn't saying no to a lot of things because I don't even like the vibration associated with no. So then I didn't want to say no to people. So what I would do was I would say you asked me to do something and I wasn't really feeling like, okay, I don't want to say no to Scott. What I say is, hey, Scott, I'm thanks for asking. I'm going to say yes to being aligned with my values right now. I've got these things I need to accomplish, and I want to wish you luck with that. And so I don't even say no in many situations. And I just reframe it such that it's coming from a positive area. And I find that way I can guard my my time a little bit. I still have a lot of work to do on that because I want to sincerely help people. Um, but that's one of the things I realized that my drive um, and that competitiveness can be damaging in relationships, in personal, professional. When I was single and dating, they're just not everybody wants they play for an experience. Maybe like the Monopoly, right? They're just the social factor is the win for them. But for you, maybe it's you want to get the win. And so learning where that's okay to just turn that off and not like who cares? It's a blessing to just be sharing time and be healthy and happy and have great people to be surround yourself with.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't I don't know if I'll ever be able to turn that off. Well, we will see. It's always been absolutely mind blowing. Even when I was a little kid, if people like we were playing something and they were like, "Oh, I'm not keeping score," or like we just like, "What? What?" That was just always the point. The score was the point, and
Yeah.
trying to get rid of some of that program, and that is like my reason for existing, which is kind of a crazy thing to, admit and come to terms with. Like everything was about achievement and winning, and I was keeping score at everything, which is wild. And again, going back to what we're talking about, these things aren't all negative, of course. It allows you and propels you to do interesting and sometimes incredible things. But I think it's a problem when it is sort of running the show, when it's unconscious. And there's this Carl Jung quote that I really like that I've been thinking a lot about lately is it's, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. And I really resonate with that, right? There's all of these things that we just assume things are the way that they are. And fate, in my eyes, is just our programming or our unconscious behavior that is just driving, everything forward. And it can be
Scott,
interesting to take a
oh,
step
sorry,
back.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Um, when I kind of discovered some of the pros and cons of certain characters in my life, I really noticed a connection with my cultural heritage and my upbringing. And then it all connected. And I'll give you an example. I pride and stubbornness came out and defensive-ness. And I really looked into some of my heritage and like my coach helped kind of, you know, peel back the layers, so to speak. And I realized in where I excelled in sports was I was either, I was the sweeper, the last man back, protecting everything. Um, in football, I was either like a receiver. I was never a great receiver, but I was a safety. And so I was always the last man protecting everything. Um, and then later I would be like attacking. So I would be all of the roles and in lacrosse. I was like a shorthanded specialist. So I would just rag the ball and run. And, there was no shot clock at that time. And so all of the things that where I excelled were connected to my family. My father was Serbian and mother Macedonian. And obviously that region of the world has had a lot of wars and challenging situations over the years and many deaths throughout our family. Um, and just realizing like there's just like it was like in the seams and the strands of my DNA. But I feel very much connected to like being born in Canada, first generation, but that's just like part of the culture I grew up in. And so I don't see it as a negative thing because it's also helped me be resilient in many ways to be where I am today. But there were also elements until I identified those and removed some of the barriers and worked on my weaknesses that they were holding me back for so long. And they were really, I call them CLMs, career limiting moves.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy exercise to do is I think when we feel stuck, it's easy to, look at our childhood and look at the things that have happened to us. But I think zooming out and doing what you did and diving into the history of your grandparents and their grandparents and like what was happening is going to help you understand yourself and why you are wired the way you are. I think this idea of, the word trauma gets thrown around a lot and I don't love it, but this idea of like generational trauma, and it could also just be like generational learning. This is what was just passed down to you, whether it's trauma or not, um, I think is super helpful. And you talked about death, and I know from our conversations, you've dealt with some pretty serious grief and death over the years and periods of your life. And those are not usually discussions that take place in the workplace. Maybe you tell HR that something happened and they give you 2 or 3 days off, and then you're supposed to be back at it. But death is the one thing that we all have in common, and we will all go through. Do you want to talk me through a little bit about that time in your life where some really tough cards were dealt your way?
Sure. Um, yeah. As far back as like when I was a child, like, and just, I remember getting the phone calls when I'd be at home growing up in Kamloops and we get a phone call at a weird time in the evening, like a weird, you know, and I could just see my mom picking up the phone and tears. And I knew like somebody else had died. And it was just the wars in, the Baltic regions. And then, that was obviously like just it's just callousing you and your mind. That you just have to move forward because there's not much family here that we have. And so is my sister and my parents. And I really won the lottery with having amazing, amazing parents that just loved us unconditionally. And like just never in my life did I ever for a minute think that my parents would separate. That alone is probably like an unbelievably rare, maybe not unbelievably rare, but I feel blessed that they just had such a love for each other and they met after a week and got married. And then, so that example, but then in university, when I was going to UBC, a good friend of mine, 25 years old, here, like a 5 minute, five 5-minute walk from my office right here, committed suicide. 25 years old. And then another friend of mine, um, yeah, he fell just hiking the Lions. And how many times have people, do we know, just gone hiking the Lions? And that was, and then um, another, so 3 people, and then another gentleman who is close with, he had cancer and passed away. So that was about just less than an 18-month period, and I was walking walking the streets downtown in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Didn't miss work, and so I'd just be roaming. And then I was thinking of becoming a Navy SEAL and just turning off all emotions and not having to feel or think or just execute on a mission and do the thing to get to the next phase and complete the task and not have to feel. And yeah, that was a really tough time for me. And I worked myself to the place of having a rash on my hand here. Didn't know what the rash was, had a rash on my forearm. Both my forearms were so burnt out that I couldn't even play tennis with friends or badminton or any racket sports that summer because I couldn't hold a tennis racket in my hand because they were, and I've got a background in kinesiology, ergonomics, so I had the full setup, everything. I was just working myself to the bone. Both my eyes were twitching, if you've ever had that happen. And I ended up going to the doctor, and he's like, "When was the last time you worked out?" And I couldn't remember. And then he's like, "Well, how many hours are you working a day?" I said, "Oh, 16, 18. When was the last time you had a day off?" I I couldn't answer that. And so I had to give a fecal sample and on a toilet and have saran wrap on the toilet. And that was when I realized, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm trying to take care of everyone else. I'm like really, really hurting. And I'm just working and working more if it hurts more so that it doesn't hurt and I don't have to think about it. And yeah, I just literally started to sleep a little bit and started getting back to the things that provide me joy, and slowly working myself back to a place of somewhat sense of normalcy, I guess, in my life. And all of the things started to go away magically. Surprise, surprise.
Well, thank you, man, for sharing that story and being open. And I couldn't imagine losing 3 people that you love and care about in the span of 18 months. And it sounds like your reaction to that, you mentioned this idea of I just wanted to turn myself into a machine. And man, I can resonate with that feeling. It's just, okay, all I have to do, all I have to focus on is this thing in front of me. That is manageable. That feels manageable. Even if the thing is really hard, that feels manageable. But the emotions and the underlying grief are much, much harder. And during that time, was there a moment? Was it that moment at the hospital where you're like, okay, where you had that wake up call, where you're like, okay, I can't do this anymore? Uh, was that the moment when you were at the hospital?
Yeah, I wasn't actually at the hospital, I was at my place, but taking out saran wrap physically and like looking at that on a toilet and like, how do I do this? And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to help everyone. I've got a corporate health and wellness firm, and I'm working as a health and wellness advisor across BC and Canada. And I'm the least well, or one of the least well, like I'm not well. And that was like, hey, you got to like change your life here because this is like not a good path. And but to be frank, that was the only way I knew what, like, I knew I could. One thing I know is I know I can work. But that, and that for me was like, I was, maybe, I don't know if I was scared. I just didn't, I knew that when I was working and focused on all these other things, I wouldn't be focused on the pain, and the loss and running through all these scenarios about those losses. I didn't have the tools, um, to deal with that well. And as I think a lot of males, now maybe things are different with Brene Brown sharing about vulnerability, and I think there's some oversharing there too. But I just wasn't a sharer of my emotions openly with people and friends, and I just kind of bottle them up and deal with them and don't try not to complain and just move forward. And so that also has, obviously, those were repercussions that I faced in my life because I didn't really deal with them in the most positive fashion.
Look at us now on a podcast talking about our feelings and what we're going through. So kudos to you, man. And I'm really happy you didn't turn yourself into a machine. Even though I think you would have made a hell of a Navy SEAL for what it's worth. Um, so,
Thanks.
you know, what I'm curious is if if I could take you in a time machine and bring you back to Antonio, who's grieving the loss of three of his friends, and he's decided, the solution is to throw himself at work and work these 16 and 18-hour days and just turn himself into a machine. What advice would you have for yourself?
Talk to your, uh, I follow some Navy SEALs online, and I might be a little bit more open to extremists, like, if they are extreme, like Jocko Willink, um, or David Goggins, or a number of other, um, kind of usual, guys that are out there. And there was one guy that talked about, your 3 a.m. homies. And who are your 3 a.m.? The guys that you can call at like 3 a.m. and whatever the situation is, they're gonna pick up and they're gonna be like, okay, I've got the shovel. Where can I meet you? Where are we burying the spot? Like they are, you share a text, your text thread with them is so dangerous if it ever got out in society that it would be like traumatic. Like the people that you really, really trust, I would say talk to a couple of those folks, and let them know what you're going through. You don't have to share it with the world, but just have a couple people to share with, um, and look for a physical, like look for healthy outlets, um, that are positive. And nutrition is really important, and really focusing on that if you can. And just the things like, you don't need a 67 step morning routine. You just need to do a few things well and consistently over time. And yeah, some of those are some of the pieces that I would throw out.
I like the 3 a.m. homies idea. Um, the one I've got one who, kind of teed this conversation up in Drew All, who I've known since we were about 3 years old, and feel very grateful and lucky to have a good group of people. But why do you think, even sometimes with folks like that, why do you think asking for help is so hard? Like I think of my own journey, and I think there's two things I was obsessed with. I was obsessed with being the best, but also I wanted to be perceived as the best. And those are like slightly different. And so, when the second one, when I wasn't doing well, I didn't want to showcase that. I wanted to be the one that other people could call at 3 a.m. Like I was okay. Um, and so that didn't allow me to ask for help. Why do you think it's so tough for people that might be wired like you and I to ask for help?
We don't want to, we, we mistaken, or some people view, um, like kindness isn't weakness or asking for help. There's strength and weakness. And I think there's a book titled There's Strength and Weakness. And it's not necessarily weakness, vulnerability and being transparent and authentic and sharing, because maybe it's hard because we also feel like there's just maybe society propagates like who a man is, and obviously that could be that changing, and there are different cultures have different. But Scott, you shared the Viking. The Viking is as manly as they come,
Mhm.
and so I'm sure there's a lot wrapped up around, our historical upbringing, and if we feel that we're vulnerable or we're viewed in like we share, then maybe people will view us in a different light that isn't the same lens that we want them to view us from.
Mhm.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, totally. Especially that last piece. It's almost like a um, controlling the narrative almost, it's like a control thing. I want to be in control with how you think of me, and if I show too much weakness, that might change, and I might not have control of that. Certainly on this last little piece here of, hitting a pretty big wall, it's kind of been beautiful asking for help from friends and just like sharing what I've been going through. And one of the helpful sort of reframes for me was, I love helping my friends. You mentioned you love helping your friends. And like by me not allowing them to be there for me, I'm robbing them of being there for me. Like I'm robbing them of a gift to help their friend who they love and they want that opportunity. And I know I'd be so pissed at Drew or any one of my friends if they were struggling and they didn't let me know. I would genuinely be angry, you know? So you just have to flip that same lens, around on yourself.
It reminds me of what you're sharing now. Reminds me of like Warren Buffett was asked one time, "What is success to you?" And he says, "I know people with names on buildings. They have all the money in the world and they're not happy." He said, "Success to me is if the people that you want to really love you, do they really love you?" And so I don't know why the things that you triggered, like you're robbing the friends that they really love you
Yeah.
and they really care for you. Um,
I love that quote. Yeah, you're robbing them of the ability to express and show how much they love you. And yeah, Warren Buffett. not just smart about money. That's a pretty a pretty good one. I like that a
Yeah.
lot. You also mentioned sort of a morning routine, and you know they get a bad rap, and there's some funny TikToks out there, but daily practices, you are what you repeatedly do. It's very, very true. I know my day is better when I meditate, when I do breath work, when I get to the gym, when I eat healthy, all of these things. Um, Not perfect. But what are some of your non-negotiable daily practices, at least that you strive to do every day?
Well, with kids, things can change dramatically. Um, um, but we're getting to an age where I can have a little bit more consistency. Um, I try to get up around 4:15, 4:30 a.m. Um, lately, it's been 4:30, 4:45. I like to be at the gym. Um, I've been kind of pushing it a little bit later. 5:30 is where I like to arrive by. Um, there, go to the gym, have a good workout, hit the sauna, um, have a shower, and be home just after 7. And then with the kids for a little bit, have breakfast, help around, see them out, and then be at the office by just after 8 a.m. or just before 8. Um, I feel I don't have a lot of things around the food and whatnot because that's already packaged and prepped and done. And so I'm just like, grab the morning, I'll grab stuff, and there's tons of stuff ready. We have the person there. A lot of these systems, I think there's a misconception that you need a lot of money to make these things happen. And you actually don't. I started doing this when I was making about $30,000 a year. I knew that I could make slightly more than the person I would be paying. And what I needed to do at that time was create time, but that was taking up about 16 hours of my week, all of these things. So I thought, okay, well, if I outsource that, I can get more time, make more than they're making, and then the arbitrage there will slowly work its way into a great place. And sure enough, it did. Um, but I think people put a value, they're like, oh, well, my consulting time is this exorbitant. Meanwhile, they're wasting all this time outside of that block of hours.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah, that's a great share. It's like, you're treating your personal life almost like a business as you would run the business. And it's just
oh
pretty
yeah. Yeah.
simple. Like, what is my time cost to do this? And can I outsource that and find that cheaper than what I'm valuing my time? And you do that enough cycles, you come out on top. And, that's a self-perpetuating cycle, which I like.
I like to ask people, Scott, I'm like, hey, what do you love to do? What do you really love to do? And then I ask some friends, they're like, I love mountain biking. I love reading. I love going for a walk. I love movies. I love, um, the reason I'm asking you this, I'm getting to a point is, and then then I'll say, well, you know, yeah, you know what I didn't hear in there, Bill? It was, I didn't hear chopping vegetables. I
Mhm.
didn't hear cooking. I didn't hear folding laundry. I didn't hear all these things. And then people are like, oh, no, 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 I love cooking. I love. But when I asked you, you didn't give me that in the top 10 list. So why not invest more time in the things that you love and outsource the things that you don't? And you don't like, I really enjoy hosting and community and building community and having people over and what meals and bringing people together does. But at this phase of my life, I can do without that because I get to invest more time directly in things that are high value activities with my kids, my friends. One day I had someone doing all the prep at my house. Meanwhile, I had a kid in my backpack and I was helping a buddy of mine move. I loathe moving. I really dislike it. It's one of my, but
Don't
he
do it right
really
now.
needed,
Not
he,
fun.
yeah, he really needed help. And so I was like, you know what? I can help, but this is why I pay to do these things. And so the whole move, I had a kid in a backpack while I'm helping my buddy move. And it was just like, I got to be with him and help him. And yeah, anyway.
You're a good man. That I feel like the 3 a.m. homies could also be interchanged with the moving homies. The people that show up when you're moving are the real ones because everyone knows it fucking sucks. Um,
Totally.
so that's a good watermark for sure.
And
Well,
Drew was there. Drew was one of those.
oh yeah,
He was
oh
there.
yeah. And my brother, shout out Colin. He's always there. Lucky to have him too. Um, well, Antonio, I really enjoyed this conversation, man. Thank you for being you. Thank you for jumping on and sharing your story. And I do hope that you join myself and Drew somewhere in the world this year or early next year.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, thanks for having me. And I really appreciate your time. And I'm excited for the journey that you are on and Drew is on. And I'll make every effort to be visiting somewhere. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be hanging out in India or Nepal or something together. Appreciate you, my friend, and for all our listeners that kind of woke up with us today. Thanks for being here, and we will see you all next week.